We've talked about returning to that topic many times, but we've never done it. Or maybe we have. This is the exact spot where I hit my head when I fell, so you can see the scar. Things were more straightforward. Everything was top-notch. It was shocking enough when Jacob bucked low. Perhaps the most, he eventually spoke up when familiar faces from Mountain Monsters appeared. Jacob has always maintained a low profile outside from the program, despite his famed loyalty, humor, and amazing encounters with the Ames team. However, his followers are absolutely going crazy over an announcement he made only moments ago. For what everything he divulged had the potential to alter the audience's perception of the show, its cast, and perhaps his own destiny. Everyone who loves the Mountain Monsters should know what's about to happen, so before we get into the specifics of what Jacob Lowe stated, please subscribe, like, and enable notifications. In the aftermath of his following the video's release, Jacob Lowe's comment gained significant traction on social media. Those who had been following Mountain Monsters since the beginning were astounded. Speaking with a passion that few had ever heard before, the guy who had stood shoulder to shoulder with Trapper, Huckleberry Jeff, and Willie was now as viewed by him. To kick things off, Jacob addressed the long-running speculation about the show. Everything from off-camera disputes to unexplained production stops, as he confessed the realm of Mountain Monsters was about more than just seeking out tales of epic proportions. The plot revolved around facing one's own issues while maintaining a perilous way of living where the boundary between fact and fiction became increasingly porous. He described hearing unexplained noises in the middle of the night while hiking through the Appalachian Mountains, saying, "Some things we found out there weren't meant to be found," lingered in the forest even after the camera stopped rolling. Even if the cameras were not active, an unseen presence continued to observe. According to Jacob, there were times when not even the most doubtful crew members could make sense of what they had witnessed. The belief that fans have always held, Jacob's tone suggested that there was more going on behind the scenes than what was seen on the show, which exaggerated events for amusement purposes. He disclosed that, for legal and safety concerns, the Ames team had been requested to keep some findings off the television. He spoke in a low voice and informed us not to go any farther. Unable to release it, Trapper remained steadfast. A deluge of supposition was unleashed by that solitary sentence. Was what the late John Trapper Ty discovered something that Jacob was mentioning? Was the group's discovery more than just folklore? Even though Jacob was slow to respond, he was very clear that this was not an elaborate publicity act. From the day the crew chose to carry on with the series without its boss, he added, this moment had been building for years. His speech was tinged with a blend of sorrow and resolve. In his concluding remarks, he fixed the camera on the camera and declared, "Trapper left us something, and I think it's time the world knew what it was." Those comments were enough to fanfare among fellow hunters and fans alike. There was a secret, an element that linked the truth to Trapper's legacy. At last, Jacob felt prepared to reveal all. Now, the only question was when, not if he would divulge it. Jacob Lowe paused for a moment to collect himself before divulging what the Ames crew had been hiding since their last season of filming together. He asserted that merely the crew found a locked wooden chest in West Virginia's Tigard Valley, a notoriously perilous hunting ground for fans, a few weeks before Trapper died. The chest was hidden deep inside a cave. An old canvas sheet covered the chest, and Jacob said it had not been put there recently. The object appeared to have been buried, and, he claimed, dug up multiple times. Even though several of the crew were reluctant to handle it, Trapper had insisted on returning it to camp. Inside the chest were relics from their prior hunts, including journals, bones, and what appeared to be hand-drawn maps linking several locations. However, what was most peculiar was an ancient snapshot of a bunch of guys posing outside a cabin that nobody knew. Jacob mentioned that Trapper developed an unhealthy obsession with those records, spending late hours examining them under the light of a lantern while muttering something about the watchers of at the forest. At that moment, no one on board grasped his meaning. However, peculiar occurrences started occurring following his demise. On occasion, Jacob recounted returning to filming sites to discover newly dug trenches where the chest was located, and he also heard howls in the distance that did not resemble coyotes or wolves, were concealed at one point. They first blamed fans or pranksters, but according to Jacob, the local authorities verified that nobody had been spotted around their campsites. That's when I started feeling like this wasn't about folklore anymore, says the author. He acknowledged that the personnel of the production had been instructed not to speak out about it. Reportedly, the last episodes omitted certain footage depicting their actions following the discovery of the chest. Jacob asserted that as of 2020, he has concealed copies of such recordings on hard drives. He stated that they informed them the program was recreational. His shocking revelation, nevertheless, was unscripted and captured on those tapes. Monsters in the mountains have teetered on the edge of mystery and reality television for quite some time. However, Jacob was now dropping hints that something or somebody had intended to conceal the truth, and that secret might be finally being revealed if what he stated after that was accurate. Leaning forward, Jacob Lowe's face turned gloomy as he started to describe what transpired following the discovery of trappers' concealed treasure. It was stated that they intended to record a follow-up expedition going back to each spot specified on the maps they discovered. Stranger and stranger things happened as they ventured further into the woods. Something went wrong with their radios. The power was gone in a matter of minutes. Global positioning systems led them in a round motion. While sleeping one night near an abandoned mine shaft, Jacob recalled a particular incident, a location marked on the antiquated map. It was sometime about 200 in the morning. At that moment, Willie awoke, alarming everyone by asserting that from only a short distance he had seen a lamp dangling in the treetops. The only sound they could detect when they shone their spotlights was the distant crack of branches. Jeff found out the following morning that, despite being closed, the chest they had brought along was unlocked. Prior to that evening, there was a missing journal inside. This, Jacob said, was the turning point when the squad began to disintegrate. There were those who thought they were getting close to solving the enigma that had plagued a trapper for years, and those who wanted to quit filming completely. Years passed. According to Jacob, the crew suspected foul play on the part of the production business, which allegedly stepped in and ordered them to scrap the project on safety concerns. It was decided that they should not proceed. A short time later, the show was momentarily removed from the schedule in the middle of night. What Jacob meant was that he realized something was amiss at that moment. A few days later, he said he got a call from an unknown number. He was cautioned by the caller to stay away from the Tigart Valley. Prior to the following week, he believed it was an elaborate hoax. Noticed a stray animal and cut tires on his truck along his property border. According to Jacob, it wasn't only him. The Ames crew as a whole was subject to comparable dangers. The burglars broke into Willie's shed and took Huckleberry's hunting cameras. This went unreported in the media, but it was conveyed clearly. Something prohibited had been touched. Jacob battled feelings of shame and terror for a long time. The reality was slowly but surely consuming him, even though he said he was only trying to shield his buddies. His last words to us were those that Trapper had made. Jacob admitted that the public needed to know what he discovered if anything were to happen. It seems like the moment has come. Visibly upset by the memories, he looked away from the camera and his voice cracked slightly. According to him, the proof that Trapper left behind was finally ready to be released, and because it would establish beyond a reasonable doubt that the object of their pursuit was not a work of fiction or legend, but something considerably more ancient and substantial. At that time, nobody was prepared for it. Jacob insisted they were stuck with it now. "I can't keep the secret," Jacob Lowe remarked. "No longer is, particularly in light of events of earlier in the year." He came clean about his visit to the spot on the map where the original chest was discovered, a remote part of the Tigart Valley. Without a film team or even a truck with the Mountain Monsters emblem, he ventured out on his own. He was curious as to whether the place had preserved any evidence of what Trapper had found. Jacob commented, "It was supposed to be a simple trip, but he was troubled by the fact that, from the moment I got there, everything didn't feel right. It was unusually silent in the forest. It was detailed the way the trees curled inward, creating an arching shape across the tiny dirt path. He continued to dig and discovered evidence that someone had been there not long before. Muddy boot prints and claw marks were seen on an adjacent oak tree. For a moment, he thought it was merely a bear, up until he saw the prints weren't spaced correctly. Their ability to walk upright was a mystery. Then, after traveling for almost 2 miles, he saw an unmarked area. A purposefully piled mound of rocks stood in the middle. There on top rested Trapper's missing diary, totally dry even though it rained. According to Jacob, it became clear to him in a whisper that this wasn't an accident. Upon taking up the journal, he beheld an enigmatic symbol etched across its initial page. There are 3 circles that overlap and an arrow that goes through all 3. He had never laid eyes on it before, but his reaction upon showing Huckleberry a photograph of it was swift and terrifying. During our inquiry into the Navy beast, we discovered a similar mark cut into the tree line. According to what Huckleberry told him, it was a terrifying link that connected throughout the course of the show's run on many hunts. While delving into the journal, Jacob came to the realization that Trapper had been recording experiences that were never broadcast, examples of cases when eyewitnesses either vanished or flat out declined to be interviewed. There was an entry about some males who were silent who kept tabs on them during the early seasons of filming, never getting in the way. Towards the conclusion of the entry, the handwriting quivered as if hurriedly penned. "No, the forests aren't being protected. What is inside is being shielded from harm." Those remarks, according to Jacob, stayed with him for months. When he contacted the network about turning turning over the journal, they advised him to put the past in the past. At that moment, things became too much. Gathering all the old footage, images, and maps that Trapper had buried, he determined to take matters into his own hands. According to Jacob, he was planning to disclose everything as a all documentary with the help of a small independent filmmaker, but someone tried to thwart their plans. His email accounts were compromised. Even the cloud backups of his footage were deleted. According to Jacob, he is unsure of who is responsible. What we found is known to them, though. His subsequent remarks sent shivers down the spines of all onlookers. Everything that happened to me subsequent to this video is a result of me being completely honest. Even Jacob Lowe's most devoted followers couldn't deny the impact of what he had to say. Ready to face, as he nervously recounted the events surrounding the disappearance of his footage, he mentioned seeing unidentified vehicles parked late at night near his residence. He told me they would remain for hours, turned off all electronics, just watched. He attempted to contact law enforcement, but by the time they reached the scene, the cars had already departed. It seemed like pranksters or devoted admirers were trying to frighten him at first. However, he discovered a folded note beneath his windshield one morning. It lacked a signature but had the identical symbol he'd found in the diary kept by Trapper, a piercing arrow and 3 overlapping circles. I then understood that this was about more than simply our presentation. According to him, it was all about something that predates our hunting days by a long shot. Jacob admitted that he contacted West Virginia folklore academics and local historians to learn more about the symbol's background. According to one authority, it looked like the markings that early inhabitants used to demarcate forbidden territory before the colonization of the Americas. It has been reported that mythology, these regions were vigilantly protected from harm. A historian had told Jacob a terrifying tale about some secluded individuals in the Appalachian Mountains who were responsible for guarding long lost burial grounds deep in the woods. Jacob recalled this narrative. Intruders ran the danger of vanishing into thin air. The most unsettling thing to Jacob was the striking similarity between the story and what Trapper had written many years later, completely oblivious to that myth. It's like he stumbled into something he wasn't supposed to find, he added. Month after month, Jacob reached out to the Ames team in an effort to reorganize, but found that a number of members had suddenly stopped responding. Willie was adamant about not discussing the treasure, and Jeff allegedly informed him that he had destroyed his copies of Trapper's maps out of worry for their safety. But Huckleberry was Jacob's supporter. They conspired to return to the Tagart Valley for one last journey. This time we'll record the entire process independently of the network. But Jacob made a false accusation before they could even set off, saying that someone had taken their video equipment and ruined their GPS trackers from his shed. I felt as though someone was perpetually ahead of the curve, he remarked. Fans could tell he was exhausted because he stared gravely into the camera and remarked, Trapper warned us this would happen if we tried to dig too deep. This wasn't a man trying to promote a new season or chase views. He was clearly exhausted. Jacob said, we thought we were hunting monsters, but I think the real monsters were making sure we never told the world what we found. The last phrase sent shock waves across the nation as it described the man's appearance, which was haunted. Online, leading to speculation that the Mountain Monsters cast had discovered something more sinister than folklore. Something that some were determined to keep hidden at all costs. Jacob Lowe revealed that he had his first real fear of death the night before filming his confession. He and a few hours prior to uploading the files, Huckleberry made the decision to go public with the evidence that was left from Trapper. However, Jacob experienced a power outage, his home security system turned out, and his phone went dead. As I peered outside, I could make out headlights shining through the darkness. According to him, the trees weren't moving, they were only sitting there. He retrieved his flashlight and went out onto the porch, but the lights went out just as he was about to reach the driveway's edge. A few moments later, his dog started howling wildly in the direction of the house, woods. Jacob finally had enough when the following morning, he discovered footprints behind his house that were bigger than anything he had ever seen. The footprints had deep impressions, as if something heavy had been standing there for a long time. So, he gathered his laptop, packed all of the journals and original maps of Trapper into a metal case and drove through the night to meet Huckleberry in a remote cabin. They spent hours filming each other, explaining everything they knew about the Watchers, the Keepers, and the invisible forces that Trapper had warned them about. Jacob said that they came to an agreement that the information would be automatically uploaded to numerous sites around the country in the event that one of them were to become incapacitated. We weren't going to be silenced, he declared. However, following that meeting, Huckleberry went 2 days without communicating. When he eventually returned, after returning Jacob's phone, Huckleberry sounded terrified and paranoid as he informed Jacob that he had been followed and that someone had attempted to get into his truck. They know, Huckleberry mumbled before ending the call. Jacob claimed that this realization came to him at that very time, that the narrative was about more than just monsters. The story revolved around control and that those who would prefer to destroy everything than allow the truth to be revealed. Jacob stated that Trapper died seeking answers, and now it is our responsibility to complete his work. Jacob's eyes gleamed as he stared intently into the camera. According to him, if you're seeing this, it signifies that we succeeded or that they have finally caught up. At the breaking point of his confession, Jacob Lowe indicated that he had one last piece of evidence that he hadn't yet revealed, the tape that Trapper had made days before his. But Jacob asserted that the movie had been stashed on a vintage camcorder discovered in Trapper's cabin, with the caption for the boys. As he played back the footage, he described Trapper as looking frail but resolute, seated at a wooden table adorned with maps and sketches. "These things we've been chasing, they're not alone," Trapper warned the team in the video. "There's a reason we keep finding the same markings in different counties. They move underground and they've been involved in other, more dangerous hunts, doing it for generations." Jacob said the tape ended when Trapper brought up a location named the Red Hollow, one of the last spots underlined on the enigmatic map. Determination to confirm it led Jacob and Huckleberry to find the spot, an overgrown ravine weeks later, kilometers from any known route. What they discovered inside stopped them in their tracks. A maze of tunnels cut into the rock adorned with bizarre symbols that matched those in Trapper's journal. Deep within one of the passages stood a huge wooden door, chained and sealed. "We didn't open it," Jacob confessed, "but something was moving behind it," he added. Through the room, they could both hear low growls that were too deep to be human and too steady to be animal. They run away that night. However, Jacob admitted that he hasn't had a good night's sleep since. "Whatever is in those tunnels is still alive and aware that we have found it," he stated, concluding his message by cautioning followers not to seek out the Red Hollow. He said, "This isn't TV anymore. This is real, and if you go there, you won't come back." Jacob Lowe concluded his message with a tone of finality that chilled everyone who watched. He announced that this would be his last public comment regarding the events surrounding Trapper's discovery, and the man's voice softened as he described the truth that lurked beneath the mountains of Red Hollow, explaining that humanity was unable to face it. "We spent years chasing legends," he stated, "but legends are just warnings disguised as stories." He disclosed that following his encounter in the tunnels, he and Huckleberry sealed the entrance with rocks and concrete, marking it with the same warning symbol as in the journal. "If anyone finds that place," Jacob warned, "they'll know by the carvings that it's not meant to be opened." He admitted that footage from that he mentioned that the night will be made public automatically if he and Huckleberry vanish. Now it's not about fame or fear, but rather about finishing what Trapper started and protecting those who are unaware. The information is stored on a physical drive in multiple undisclosed locations. The man paused, clearly moved, before describing the Ames team as a family. He hoped that fans would remember them not as monster hunters, but as men who sought the truth when nobody else would. "We've lost too many," he said in a low voice, "and I'm not going to let Trapper's legacy die in silence." The video turned to black as Jacob glanced over his shoulder as if someone had walked in, and since then, Jacob Lowe has been silent, neither uploading nor responding to messages. The mystery surrounding mountain monsters has only deepened, and now everyone is wondering what exactly happened. Whether his story was a warning, a confession, or something deeper, one thing is certain: his social media pages remain active but silent, with fans flooding the comments asking if he's safe. Those woods in the Appalachians are where Jacob Lowe and Trapper Ty really find themselves.